Coach, can you hear me now?
You got me?
Perfect. Yes, sir. We got you. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, man. It's good to see everybody. I hope everybody's safe and doing well during this time. And, these virtual meetings have been fun, going well, but can't wait to get out on the grass with them. That's for sure.
All right, Coach, we'll start taking questions. We're going to start with Adam Teicher. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Great. How are you, Adam?
Good, thanks. Hey, I know Willie Gay is just getting started, but just looking at his skill set, I was wondering what maybe he brings to your group that maybe you didn't have last season.
We really love his athleticism. He's a really, he's got a good frame. He's big and he can run. So we're excited about that.
Let's go to Harold Kuntz. Go ahead, Harold.
Hey, hope you're doing well, Matt. I just want to ask you, Andy Reid had mentioned that the assistants have been taking some quizzes for these guys, making sure they're attentive with their eyes open, videos up in the virtual press conferences. How has that gone with you and some of the guys as they're going through the whole virtual process? And do you feel that they've been attentive during those?
Yeah, I've been very pleased with the linebacker room and just how they've embraced what we're doing. And, I think they've grown within our scheme during this time.
Let's go to Pete Sweeney. Go ahead, Pete.
Matt, thank you for taking some time with us today.
Sure.
I was curious about, so you take a guy in Willie Gay so high, obviously the organization is really invested in what he can do. Such a weird situation. You'd mentioned how you're looking forward to getting on the grass. What do you miss in detail with this guy like Gay, who's come into the program completely new, when it can only be virtual and not in person?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I haven't really looked at it that way. It's, as coaches, our job's to, adapt and adjust. And in the times we've been in, that's kind of what we're doing. So really, it's been great because I don't know that you get this much individual meeting time normally because you are racing to get out on the field. So hopefully it clears up any questions that he has in his mind. So when we do get out on the grass, we can hit the ground running.
Let's go to BJ Kissel. Go ahead, BJ.
Hey, Coach, appreciate the time. I want to ask about just the competitive side of you guys as coaches, and that, everyone across the league is having to deal with these virtual OTAs, and guys have been doing things a certain way for so long. And now that's kind of gotten, thrown into a blender to figure out new ways to try to do it. And I'm sure teams are doing it differently. Just how much do you like that challenge of figuring out ways when there's no real blueprint of how to do this, to figure out the best ways to get whatever it is that you're trying to get across to these players?
Yeah, I think, the good thing is it's still teaching, and coaching's just teaching. And, one of the things that, we've had to use different platforms, but at the end of the day, you're still teaching off of the same concepts and using video and using the different things, different avenues that you have available to yourself and as a group. So there's some trial and error for sure. But all in all, it's still teaching in my mind.
Let's go to Matt Derrick. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Coach, I hope you're doing pretty well with all this.
Thanks. I hope you are too.
Hey, when we talked to Spags last week, he had mentioned that with Willie, he kind of envisioned him playing a role similar to Reggie Ragland played last year. Do you kind of see that same way? Is that more about the style of those guys and the positions that they play, maybe, or is it more about the usage and playing time you might see with him this year?
I think it's, one about how he fits within our defense. I think it's a good starting point. And, guys' roles are constantly developing and adapting off what they can handle and kind of how the unit advances. But I agree with Spags. I think it's a good starting point, and then kind of see what he grows into.
Let's go to Sam McDowell. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, Coach. Damian Wilson last year, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it seemed like you had him in one spot maybe in training camp with an idea and kind of moved him to a different spot later. I'm wondering if you see him settling into whether it's the Sam or the Will position, or just how you envision that going, or if it's too early for that kind of plan.
I think it is a little bit early, but I will tell you this, that's the one thing in our scheme. Those two outside linebacker positions are very, very similar. So there's a lot of carryover, and when you start talking about conceptually how we build our defense, those guys are asked to do a lot of the same things.
Let's go to Herbie. Go ahead, Herbie.
Hey, Coach, appreciate your time here.
Thanks.
Dorian O'Daniel, last year just played mostly on special teams. He's entering his third year, so kind of like a two-part question here. What is the vision that you have for O'Daniel coming into this season, and how important is a third year for a guy like him to show that he belongs?
Well, I think it's, first I'll start with the year. I think it's not only important that, in his third year that he continues to grow and develop, but it's also the second year within our scheme. So there's going to be less of a learning curve coming back out on the practice field and when we start playing games for him than there was last year. Last year, that's the one thing. It was his second year in the league, but it was his first year within the scheme. I'm excited about Dorian. He's really embraced these meetings, and he's been very, very active and worked hard. So I'm excited to see how it transpires out on the field.
Let's go to Surin Petro. Go ahead, Surin.
Coach, thank you for the time. I'm curious, just kind of overall, the game, the positionless football we hear talked about. There's so much when you go to nickel and dime of safeties coming down and playing in the linebacker position, and we see them have to have kind of those skills. Daniel Sorensen, how much of that is, do you have to work in concert with DB coaches and kind of trading off, grabbing some of their guys and doing some linebacker teaching and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really that's kind of how the game's evolved and developed, right? So there is a lot of trading players, so to speak, right? Where you move them around from room to room. And I think that's one of the things that Spags does a great job as far as teaching within our defensive scheme, the concepts, not necessarily just a position, memorizing a position. When we're in this coverage concept, this is what this position's doing, but that could be a wide variety of people in that position. And then, the great thing is we don't have a whole lot of egos on the defensive staff. So we're constantly moving guys around during individual in order to make them not only best suit them for their talents, but to help all 11 on the field and the team.
Okay, looks like we've got time. We got Nate Taylor will be our last one. Go ahead, Nate.
Hey, Matt, thanks again. I have a two-part question to ask you. For you as a coach in the second year of a scheme with mostly the same players from last year, what's been the benefits for you as a coacher, as a teacher of the scheme, when this is all you have from a remote standpoint? And then secondly, a guy you carried all last year in Darius Harris, just how much has he learned from what he saw last year, and what's it been like to sort of work with him with the chance of him being on the field whenever you guys do get back on the field?
Well, first, Nate, I think the great thing about when you're in the second year of a scheme and the second year with a room where there's not a ton of change, you get a lot more in the detail of the why. Why are we calling this? Why do we install it this way? Why are we teaching this specific technique this way? So, you're teaching when you first put in a scheme, you're teaching base level. Here's your assignment. Okay. And then it gets a little more detailed as you get that first OTA to training camp, et cetera, et cetera. But now when you sit back and you can peel it off, you get to teach the why a lot more. And what's the strengths, what's the weaknesses, and why are we doing this? Why are we calling it? A guy like Darius, I'm excited to see Darius on the field, but he has done everything we want and more in the classroom. So the great thing about that is for a guy like that, not only does he know and understand from a playbook standpoint, a film standpoint, our scheme, but he also knows how we operate, and what to expect week in and week out. What do you expect on Tuesday? What do you expect on Thursday? Yada, yada.
Coach House, we appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you all. Take care.